We continue our story with the opening of Age of Extinction. Obviously, all the Autobots are in hiding, and humanity protests them despite the fact that they saved them countless upon countless upon countless times, and have even warned them that their own foolishness has pretty much gotten them into trouble. However, this isn't their story. It's about the Autobots. It's about Jazz and his story. And so this is where we pick up with him racing as fast as he can to get to a location. He received a distress signal from one of his Autobots, his brother, Smokescreen, and he's making it there just in time as he's confronting Lockdown. Lockdown has him slammed against the ground and pinned, ready to use his spark extractor and pretty much end it. However, this is where Jazz simply transforms and Falcon punches Lockdown, telling him to get off of his younger brother. And this is where Smokescreen is absolutely grateful that Jazz showed up. And this is where Jazz simply tells him to go to these coordinates and meet up with the rest of them. And this is where Smokescreen pretty much asks him, what about you? To which he says he's going to make him regret what he did to Ratchet, to all the Autobots he's ever caught. And this again goes to show you, or pretty much confirms, yeah, Ratchet still had the same fate as in the original. And so Jazz and Lockdown pretty much face off. You might say, oh wait, where's the rest of Cemetery Wind? Well, considering the fact that they weren't always around Lockdown when he was hunting Autobots and stuff like that, I'm going to say this is one of those moments. So Jazz and Lockdown get into a fight. But before that happens, obviously there is some dialogue to where Lockdown simply wants to know, where's Optimus Prime? What are those coordinates for? Why don't you go ahead and tell me, and I'll spare you and maybe the rest of your Autobots as well. To which Jazz takes out his crescent cannon and tells him, yeah, like I trust the person who killed one of my friends after he proved himself not to be a threat. To which Lockdown simply states, very well. And this is where Lockdown actually begins to transform his face into a gun. However, Jazz isn't going to play that. He shoots him mid-transformation in the face. All right, like mid-transformation in the face. And this disrupts the transformation, causing it to retract. So now Lockdown is actually damaged from this. And this is where Jazz takes full advantage of it and rushes him here. Keep in mind, with all the upgrades he's had from Revenge of the Fallen to Dark of the Moon, especially with the, the whole Stealth Force thing, Jazz is pretty much strong enough to contend with Lockdown at this point. Keep in mind, this is the same dude, if you guys watch my RC versus Jazz video, who was able to one-tap Brawl in the movie iteration of the comics, which was basically containing deleted scenes. So, yeah, he was able to, knock Brawl out with a kick. So imagine that being upgraded for, quite a while. Yeah, He's beating up Lockdown a little bit here. But again, this is still Lockdown, who pretty much puts down his battle mask so that he can at least use that as his eyes for at the moment, and pretty much begins to actually go blow for blow with Jazz here, both utilizing their agility, their respective speeds and stuff like that. However, Jazz, being a little bit smaller still, is still more agile and still more precise, and he makes sure Lockdown does not hit him once. And Lockdown is actually on the receiving end of most of these blows here. He's getting stabbed in the leg, uppercut in the face, grabbed by the arm, and straight up power slammed by this Autobot, to which Lockdown is actually kind of bewildered a little bit that he didn't think some Autobot could do this to him, and to which he's asking, how are you able to do this? No Autobot should be able to fight this well. No Autobot should be this strong. To which Jazz reiterates, he's Optimus Prime's second in command, first lieutenant of the Autobot resistance. You really thought I was just gonna be some chump? Nah, I didn't get by because of my mind. I got by because of my skills, my talents, and my lethality. But being a lieutenant is just one of the best perks about it. And this is where he simply slams Lockdown and then grabs him by the leg, spins him around like he's winding up for a seismic toss, and then throws him into a collapsing, or at least an abandoned building that's just nearby. Using this opportunity, Jazz simply tells Lockdown next time they meet won't be pretty, and transforms and hightails it out of there before Cemetery Wind is able to regroup and even check on Lockdown. So What happens at this point? Well, believe it or not, Jazz actually regroups with the rest of the Autobots. Cliffjumper, Smokescreen, Bumblebee, Mirage, Sideswipe, RC, Chromia, and Hound. They might say, oh, well, what? Why keep Hound but not add Crosshairs and Drift? And to be kind of honest, they added really nothing to the movie, unfortunately. And I do love their characters. I do love Crosshairs more snarky and, kind of aggressive attitude, and I love Drift's, calm samurai aesthetic. But again, in terms of what they had, they were vastly too new. And in all honesty, the only one that actually had some potential, in my opinion, for anything else was Hound. Plus, the Autobots do need a new medic since Ratchet is gone, so he was the best choice. And so this is where Jazz pretty much regroups with the rest of them, asking them if they're okay. And pretty much RC simply conveys that, yeah, they've been fine for a while. And this is where Sideswipe is the one to note that RC and Chromia have been kind of in charge since he's been out helping the rest of the Autobots. And this is where Mirage simply asks, hey, did you find him? Did you find Optimus? To which he says, nah, I was just buying Smokescreen some time to escape. And this is where Smokescreen simply thanks his brother for helping him out of that situation. And this is where they all take a moment to kind of just sit there and think. Maybe we should have left. Maybe Sentinel had a point. These humans really weren't didn't think of us like they were their allies. They called us machines. They tried to get rid of us, right? At every chance they could, because they didn't want us here on the planet, despite the fact that they literally took our technology and reverse engineer it. And then they're still using our technology, so it's insane. And now they're hunting us, they're branding us as the criminals, despite the fact that they made their decisions, they made their choice, right? And this is where Cliffjumper states, yeah, that is true. And unfortunately, we still find a way to reap the consequences of it. And, well, this is where Jazz simply thinks to himself, I'm not Optimus. Never have been, never will be. So I'll tell you guys this. If we find him, and once we find him, if he's dead, we'll leave. Maybe avenge him as well, but we'll leave. But if we find him, I'm going to make sure he understands we're done with humanity. And so this is where Jazz simply kind of just waits it out for a little bit, takes a break, stays with the Autobots in this, in the desert location, right? And this is where Optimus would eventually show up, still going through the same things with Lockdown and Cemetery when he eventually shows up and finds the rest of the Autobots. And he's happy to see that Bumblebee and Jazz especially are alive, because keep in mind, they are the last members of their original team. And Jazz informs him that he was able to save only them, but couldn't get anyone else. To which Optimus asks, the Wreckers? Jazz simply states, gone. He asks the aerial bots, to which he says, gone. Ratchet and Jazz and Bumblebee and the rest of the Autobots simply just hang their head down. And Optimus is like, no, not him. And to which Jazz notes that he was able to get Ratchet's memory banks as well. And pretty much just, I guess you could say, installs it in his arm or something and plays it. To which they see everything Ratchet, had to go through. Him even surrendering and not even firing at the humans, and then they still slaughtered him, they still killed him. And this is where Cade, still being there with his daughter and her boyfriend, which do we really talk about how like that's some diddler type of stuff right there, especially with the Romeo and Juliet laws. I understand it's a law in some states and stuff like that. I'm not knocking the states and stuff like that, but we really don't talk about how she was a a Kendrick. What's the Kendrick verse? A minor, and he was practically a grown man. No one talks about that. I swear. But with that out the way, this is where they honestly they go after KSI immediately, because here's the thing: more Autobots, more of an admission to get revenge for Ratchet, because you have Optimus who wants that revenge, Jazz who wants that revenge, and Bumblebee who wants that revenge. And considering the rest of the Autobots also have a close relationship with Ratchet in a way, yeah, they pretty much pull up in there. And the difference about this here is that, yes, Galvatron and Stinger are still going to be active here, but with more Autobots, they actually do more damage to the KSI facility, and they hold back nothing. We see that, Bumblebee and Jazz, along with RC, and pretty much RC and Chromia being literal human size, can get into more different areas, such as, like laboratory locations and stuff like that. And so they're able to destroy all of that stuff as well, and even kill some of the guards as well, which I don't think would be unjustifiable, because keep in mind what they had to go through, what they were doing here as well. And pretty much they disable and destroy everything. And this is where we could definitely say Chromia gets a glimpse at Galvatron, and she's like, looks very familiar for some reason. But she kind of just goes about her day and just starts destroying everything. And well, believe it or not, this is where they actually do confront Joshua Joyce, and well, they don't kill him, but they do destroy the laboratory. And he's just looking on in, I guess you could say, in some ways, horror or shock. But at the same time, though, this dude was literally, I guess you could say, coherent or co-signing the fact that they were slaughtering, or that Cemetery Wind was literally slaughtering Autobots. And let's not forget what he did to Brains, another Autobot as well. Literally kept him in a tube and tortured him with electricity if he didn't give him information. Like, what? Can we all really just talk about how hypocritical they literally made the humans in the Bayverse, and how ungrateful they made them, and then to go as far as them being just as bad as the Decepticons, if not slightly, I'm gonna probably say this, slightly worse. I'm gonna just flat out say it, they might be slightly worse. It's just they legit betrayed the people who were protecting them, and then hunted them down. You must say, oh, well, but the government didn't know. No, but they just still had the responsibility of making sure that the Autobots were at least okay, because of all the times they bailed them out and saved them. Which again shows you just how grateful some of the people are within the entirety of the Transformers franchise. But with that being said, yes, they do destroy the lab and a large majority of the KSI drones as well. So what happens here? Well, believe it or not, some of the interactions still go the same with Galvatron and Stinger. The highway chase still happens just like in the original. Only difference this time is here with more Autobots, or more combat oriented Autobots. I would actually say that actually, who would I actually want to put in this kind of scenario? I would probably say Sideswipe and Mirage are the ones to kind of stay behind with Optimus and fight Galvatron with him. And this actually means Galvatron's on the back foot for a large majority of the fight. But again, keep in mind, this is still like Megatron with a whole black hole in his chest. So I guess it's not entirely too fair or entirely unfair in all honesty. But yeah, they managed to do some damage to Galvatron. Lockdown comes in and does shoot Optimus in the back. However, this is where the rest of the Autobots simply do come back here, and well, we get Lockdown versus the Autobots while Optimus is disabled. So this means Lockdown is fighting the following: Jazz, Smokescreen, Cliffjumper, Bumblebee, Sideswipe, Mirage, RC, Chromia, and Hound. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a fair fight now, does it? Bro getting jumped like it's 6-way Sunday. So unfortunately for him, I'm gonna say yeah, they actually do kill Lockdown, but again, Galvatron does manage to escape, just like in the original, because they do pull him back. And so, with that being said, here the Autobots now have access to Lockdown's full ship, and this is where I would definitely have them exterminate all of the whatchamacallit, all the mercenaries, and then they sit on the ship for a little bit. They have the means to leave this planet and go away for good here. So, after some deliberating, and I'll probably say a little bit of a moral debate between Optimus and Jazz, Optimus ultimately decides that they do need to leave Earth, as they are no longer worth them helping. And that's where I'm going to leave it off here, you guys. Please comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends, and you guys have a blessed day.